Put your beer down. Get your nose out of my beer. Selfie. Jiva, what are you doing?
All right. So, my persuasive speech is going to be about comic books. And I wanted to start off with a question. What is your first thought when you think of someone reading comics? Is it a child who's just trying to pass the time away? A grown man still living in his mother's basement? Or is it just a dumb teenager who doesn't know what's going on in the world and doesn't want to read anything? I have a quote here from one of the greatest comic creators of all time, in Stan Lee, and he said, if Shakespeare and Michelangelo were alive today, and if they decided to collaborate on a comic, Shakespeare would write the script, and Michelangelo would draw it. How could anybody say that this wouldn't be as worthwhile an art form as anything on earth? And I tend to agree with that. So in this speech, I'd like to give a quick little overview of the history of comics and why they are valid as a form of entertainment just as much as books or movies or TV shows, and why people are so attached to these characters who have been around for sometimes about 80, 90 years. And then also Comic-Con, why people go there, and just flocks of people, hundreds of thousands of people go there every year to celebrate these characters and stories that are created. So there are 4 ages of comics. The Golden Age, which kind of started things off and went from 1930 to 1956. It created most of the characters that we know today: Batman, Superman, Captain America. Captain America and Superman fought the Nazis, which a lot of characters did as well, but those were the 2 big ones. And there were critics to the early comics. Dr. Wertham said, the number of good comics is not worth discussing, but the great number that masquerade as good certainly deserve close scrutiny. He believed that they were leading to child delinquency and also bad understanding of physics, because some of the characters could fly, and he thought children would believe they could as well. This started the Comics Code Authority, which was the rating system of comics at the time. And then the Silver Age, which went from 1956 to 1970. This is sometimes called the Marvel Age, and it's when people like Jack Kirby and Stan Lee got started creating comics. They created about 90% of the Marvel Universe during this time. And then the Bronze Age, which went from 1970 to 1985, and this is when they started kind of breaking the rules of the Comic Code Authority. They started telling stories about drug use and abuse and just violence and death and sort of the darker parts of life that we all see. And this led to Spider-Man's girlfriend dying in Gwen Stacy by the hand of Green Goblin. And it's when Frank Miller began making stories like this one, The Dark Knight Returns, which is considered by most people to be the best Batman story ever told. And it is one of the darker ones, and sort of views what an actual vigilante would be viewed as in the media and people around him. And then now we're in the modern age of comics, which is from 1985 to now. Comics are kind of at their lowest point being sold. Movies obviously are being made, but the comic itself is just valued very low. And what does all this mean for comics? The reason why I wanted to bring this up is just that comics have gone through a lot of changes, and they have come out stronger every single time. And the characters in these comics are still well loved. Like I said, they've been around 80, 90 years. Characters from Batman, Superman. Then you got people in you got the comics in the funnies, and Calvin and Hobbes and Garfield and such. And they're still loved and admired even now. And they can tell nuanced stories. They don't always have to be superhero stories. Like this one, Moss, is about the Holocaust, and the Jewish people are being portrayed as mice, and the Germans are portrayed as cats in it, as their predators. And it tells it in a way that I've taken World War II classes and learned a lot about it, and I didn't know a lot that was in that book. And it made me feel differently about the Holocaust than anything else ever has. And that leads me to my next point, is that the artwork will tend to lend itself to the story in ways that movies and TV do, but even greater at times. And as Dr. Seuss said, words and pictures are yin and yang. Married, they produce a progeny more interesting than their parent. And the thing about comics is they kind of combine TV and reading. It makes the action is smoother in superhero comics than in reading. You don't get caught up in your head. And it's basically TV, which allows you to imagine what these people would kind of look like and sound like, which is really interesting. And like I said, they're turned into movies a lot, and like in movies, sometimes the comic is better. And there are huge differences between Batman vs. Superman, and like I said, The Dark Knight Returns. The Dark Knight Returns is a more well-rounded story, whereas Batman vs. Superman kind of seems like they're just trying to throw anything and everything they can into that story. And as Art Spigmore says, comics are a gateway drug to literacy. It's easier than reading a book. You get to see the pictures, it goes fast, and for children and people that have trouble reading, it's an easy way to get into it and learn new words that you wouldn't know before. And comics also deal with social issues much faster than TV, movies, or books, because they're released on a month-to-month, sometimes even weekly basis, whereas a movie will take 2 years, a book can take 2 to 10 years to make. So comics are right there on the spot to deal with any issues that are coming up. And they also have old-fashioned values. Like I said, the characters in them have been around 80 to 90 years. You're not going to see Superman start cursing someone out or punch a woman or do anything that would be against the values of a 1940s person, because that's when he was created, and they've kept that up for the most part, which I think is an interesting character trait, that he could still exist in the 1940s, but he can still also exist in this world. So far, I've kind of tried to look at comics that are other than superheroes, but now I just want to look at superheroes themselves. So people idolize superheroes, especially children. You're going to see them every Halloween. They're going to dress up as Batman, as Superman, as Spider-Man. And a quote by Jake Karask: "Just as we idolize celebrities, we idolize superheroes. Furthermore, based on theories of social psychology, comics likely impact our levels of aggression, physical behavior, leadership ability, and attitudes. They can be inspirations to us, symbols of hope, people that never give up no matter what happens to them. If you think Superman had his planet destroyed, he's the only one, he's an alien among us, and he feels separate. Batman has had his back broken, his parents killed, and some of his best friends killed, and he continues on, which is inspiring to anyone that's having trouble. They also have weaknesses, which show that it's okay to have weakness. You don't have to be perfect to make a difference. And also an interesting thing is that superheroes are generally good people who are going to do what's right. And I think that's interesting when you look around and you feel like there aren't a lot of good people around anymore, and you're feeling it can give you some hope. They show us great villains or great heroes, awful villains. They can go to the Holocaust, and they can take us anywhere that we want to go as long as we're brave enough to follow where they're going to take us. And that's my speech.
Mm-hmm.